Okay, so I want to start off with the maths equations. But before I get to the equations, I need to take you through where it starts. Maybe let me straight away start at that point. You say mathematics, it's a combination of three main things, which is the signs, the numbers, and the letters. So when we talk about the signs, it is those signs that you already know. It could be a plus, a minus, a division, a multiplication, maybe less than, maybe less, or it's equals to, even equal. It's a sign. There are more signs, but for now I'll just limit it to those signs, and as we continue, that's when you will discover some more signs. And in terms of the numbers, we have just 10 numbers starting from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and the last one being 9. So any number that you can think of, it's a combination of those 10 numbers. An example would be 150. 150, it will be the combination of 1, 5, and 0. So that number on its own is a combination of these 10 numbers. So when it comes to the letters, it is those letters that you know, A all the way up to Z. It doesn't matter if it's in capital letters or small letters. So what I want you to be aware of is that maths is a combination of these three things. So how do they combine them to form a maths problem? Before I can get to that, I will therefore need to take you through a structure of a term. And say a term, it has a structure which is in this format of the sign, and then after the sign it is a number, after the number it is a letter, and lastly an exponent. So this is how a term is structured. Just remember this: the sign, a number, a letter, and the exponent. I will definitely give you an example, something like 2k. So the sign for this term, it is an invisible positive. The number, it is 2. The letter, it is k. Exponent, invisible 1. So another name that you might be familiar with is coefficient. Instead of you saying a number, you can still say coefficient. Then when it comes to the letter, it is variable. So just be aware that they refer to those in that term. So another term, let's say we have negative 7y. So the interpretation of this will be that negative being the sign, and then the coefficient of the number, or the number being 7, the letter or variable being y, exponent being invisible positive 1. It's not only those, there are more that I can give, but for now let me give multiple terms. Maybe let's say 2k plus maybe let's say x, then we minus 3p to the exponent of 2. How many terms are we having there? We've got 3 terms. How do I know? It's because a term is separated by a sign of a plus or a minus. So you can see we've got a term there, and a term there. So how am I going to interpret it? I will say we have an invisible positive, then 2 being the number, k being the letter, invisible 1, invisible 1, so that means the sign is positive 1x, then the exponent is invisible 1, then the sign is negative. We've got the number or the coefficient being 3, then the letter or variable being p, the exponent being positive 2. Remember, this is the coefficient of that letter. The coefficient of that letter. The coefficient of that letter. So just always be aware that when you are given a term, it will be in that format of the sign, the number, the letter, and an exponent. Unless if it's a constant is just a number which is not attached to a letter. So now I think we can get ready to continue. Maybe let me start on a blank page where I'm therefore going to take you through types of math problems. And then from there we will get onto this specific one that I mentioned when I started with this lesson for today. So let's see. The types of math problems that you might need to be aware of is an equation. Maybe let me start with this type of a math problem called an equation, and the second one being an expression. So it's very, very much easy to know when you are having an equation and when you are having an expression. How do you know? An equation will always have an equal sign. So every time you see a math problem and it has an equal sign, it means it is an equation. But one that does not have an equal sign, it means it is an expression. So the question now is, what do we do when we have an equation? We solve. What do we do when we have an expression? We simplify. That's what you need to know. So we do have types of equations being linear, and maybe let me limit it to the second one being a quadratic. But for now, I'm going to focus on a linear equation. Do not worry much about the other types of equations, but for now we will just focus on this one. Maybe at a later stage or in the next lesson we will look at an expression. Excuse me. So now let's see. When it comes to an equation, I did mention that we have a linear equation, and number 2 we've got a quadratic equation. Remember, I did say that when you have an equation, we solve. What are we solving? We are solving for the letter. I said when we have an expression, what do? We simplify. So when you have an expression, just think of you being given something which is long and you need to simplify it, meaning you need to rewrite it in its simplest form. That's what we are going to be doing when we get to a stage where we need to deal with the expressions. But now let's look at the equations. What did I say regarding the equations? We solve. What are we solving? We solve for the letter. What letters are we having? We do know very well that we've got letters from A up to Z. So let me just write there to say we're going to be dealing with a linear equation. So an example of a linear equation would be, let's say 2, what letter can you think of? Maybe let's say P. We can just add there, maybe let's say 3, and then let's equate this to what? Maybe we can equate it to 7. So you look at this and you realize you've got an equal sign, then it means it is an equation. What does it mean? It means we are going to solve. What are we solving? We solve for the letter. What letter are we having there? We have letter P. So that means in the end we must tell what is the value of that letter P, such that if we say 2 multiplied by that a value which represents p and we add it with 3, it will be equals to 7. That's what we do when we solve. Maybe an easy to understand example would be if you have 2 plus x is equals to 4 and they give you this as a problem to solve. They are simply saying what is that number in place of x, whereby when you say 2 plus that number will be equals to 4. Already we know that it should be 2, because when we say 2 and we plus it with 2, it will be equals to 4. But we do not guess. We have to follow mathematical steps in order to work it out, which is what I'm going to be teaching you. Let's see. Okay, I'll need a blank page to do that. So you may also be given, let's say, negative k, maybe minus 4 there, and this can be equated to negative 4. When you look at this, you realize you've got an equal sign. What does it mean? It means this is an equation. If it is an equation, it means you need to solve. What are you solving? You are solving for the letter. What letter are you solving? Is letter k. So that means in the end, you need to say k is equals to whatever number. So that when you say negative k minus 4, it will be equals to negative 4. So let me bring another blank page so that I will therefore take you through some equations that I'm going to solve. Something very much important that I would like for you to be aware of is the fact that when you have a linear equation, you will always have a letter being equals to a number as your final answer. This is the format of your final answer for a linear equation. So that means whatever that you do, you must just make sure that the letters are on the left and the numbers are on the right. That's all that you need to do. So let's see, if you have 2p, let's say minus 3, and this is equals to okay, let's say 7. Firstly, ask yourself a question. Is this an equation or an expression? It is an equation because it has an equal sign. Okay, what type of an equation is it? Is it a linear equation or is it a quadratic equation? It is a linear equation. How do I know that it is a linear equation? Because when you look at all the letters that you are given, all of them, they are to the highest degree of 1. So that means whatever letter that you are given, the exponent of those letters must be 1. If all the letters are to the exponent of 1, then it means it is a linear equation. But if it is 2, or one of the letters, it is to the power of 2, then it means it's a quadratic equation, which is something that I will teach you at a later stage. But for now, I'm only focusing on a linear equation. So linear equation, the format is such that you need to have letters on the left, numbers on the right. So that means you end up in this case having 2p, which should be equals to, already you have 7. It is this 3 that has to go to the other side. Then it has to change a sign. That's why it becomes positive 3. Remember, the main aim is to move all the numbers to the right hand side and leave the letters on the left hand side. So that means you end up having 2p, which is equals to, what is this plus that? That plus that, it is definitely 10. So now this 2 is attached to p. Now we need to detach it. How do we detach it? You divide by exactly that number that you want to detach. So that means you will always divide by the coefficient with its sign, of which in this case, the coefficient of this is that invisible positive. So that means even on this side you divide by that 2. So if it is positive 2, you don't need to write it because it is there as an invisible positive. So why did you divide by 2? Is so that that cancels with that, and that divided by that, it gives you 5. So that means P, it is equals to 5, and that should be the end of it. Okay, let's look at another one. Maybe you might be having, let's say, negative 2k. Maybe we minus 1, and this is equated to, let us say, it is equated to 5. Yes. So you look at this, it's an equation. Why? Because we have an equal sign. What do? We want to make sure that all the numbers are on the right hand side, all the letters are on the left hand side, which means you have negative 2k, which should be equals to 5. That one goes to the other side. It always changes the sign when it crosses the equal sign. So that means here you will remain with that negative 2k, which is equals to, what is that plus that? That will definitely be 6. So now you want to detach that negative 2. That is why on both sides you divide by exactly that, so that it cancels. Then you've got letter is equals to that divided by that. That should be negative 3. So your final answer is in that format of letter is equals to a number. So that is how you generally deal with the problems related to linear equations. It doesn't end there. Maybe let's say we have 2 which is equals to, you can have maybe x plus 4 on that other side. So it doesn't really matter that much as long as you've got letters one side, numbers one side. So that means you can still transpose or transport that one to the other side, where already you have 2. That's why you start by writing 2, because 2, it is already there. This one being the visitor, it has to change a sign, and then it becomes negative 4, which is equals to, here it is x that remains. So that means when you say 2 minus 4, definitely that will be negative 2, which is equals to x. Then I always consider this as someone saying, Desmond is my name. So it would be better for you to say, my name is Desmond. So it's like you had your final answer in that format, but now you rewrite it in the formal format if you would like for me to put it in that way. So even this, it's okay. This is even better. That's why I'm saying think of it as Desmond is my name, and that last one being my name is Desmond. So maybe let me add another one, even though I'm curious to know what other problem I should add. Okay, maybe let's say negative y. I'm going to plus it with 1. Then I'm going to say this is equals to negative 1. Okay, for the fact that we see an equal sign, it means it is an equation. What do? We have to make sure that letters on one side, numbers on one side. So already I'm having that, which is equals to negative 1. This one goes to the other side, it changes a sign. Then you have your negative y, which is equals to negative 2. So remember, you have an invisible 1 there. That is why you will divide by that invisible 1 so that it cancels completely. Then you remain with your y, which is equals 2. That cancels with that. That goes 2 times into that. Therefore, you have your y, which is equals to 2. And that should be the end of it, because you've got a letter being equals to a number.